Hi, everybody. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I was at my sister's house. We had a lot of great treats. One of the best bakers I know, and I think that within a very short amount of time, you snap back to reality and you realize that a lot of the stuff that's been going on in the world doesn't go away because you get together with family, especially since if you think about it, Thanksgiving is a domestic holiday. I think the only other country that celebrates a holiday like it is Canada. But yesterday, for a day when I thought many people would be at home or doing things with other people that they know in person, I was pretty surprised and encouraged to see um, so many people participating in the chat, asking questions, giving their opinions, compared to the usual crowd, which I'm hoping in the future we're just going to get a real community of people starting their own channels, starting to opine on events all around the world and in the United States as well. So a couple of things to get out of the way before I get to the topics that are mentioned here. On Sunday at 1 p.m., we will have 1 p.m. Eastern time, I believe. If not, no, it's 12 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to have two guests from Zimbabwe. One of them is a politician. His name, I believe, is, hold on. Bear with me for 1 second. Bernard Mutemasango. So we're going to have one person who's active in politics. We're going to have another person who's living in the exile in South Africa. What people don't realize is that for years there were a lot of Zimbabweans were fleeing to South Africa, which is no super rich country itself. They were leaving Zimbabwe for South Africa, pretty much the same way that a lot of Central Americans flee to Mexico, and then from there, some of them would make their way to Australia, some of them would make their way to the UK, some of them would make, and it's been a long journey for them. So we're going to try to get as much information out of this person as possible. I don't know him very well. It could go great. It could go not so great. And of course, there's the other person who's joining. And I think that unfortunately, we react a lot to events in countries that we don't pay attention to very often. And in Zimbabwe's case, even though I've read a lot about Zimbabwe for years and years, about their history, about the ZAPU and the ZANU and Mugabe and Como and Ian Smith, pretty much this took me by just as much surprise as it probably took everybody else. So that's as regards the interview. It's going to be at 12 p.m. Sunday. And of course, I'll post the time ahead of time on minds.com, hopefully, and on Facebook on the Bold Like a Leopard page. I'll try to put that up ahead of time. I have a hard time remembering it, but hopefully this time I'll come through. Second issue, a little more detached from real life, is the so-called removal of Sticks Hexenhammer's YouTube channel yesterday night. Now, I watched this video. I wasn't really that focused when he was describing what happened, but I'll tell you what's gonna be the result of censoring people like Sticks Hexenhammer. First of all, I think Sticks Hexenhammer, you may disagree with a lot of the things he says, but he has some scarily accurate predictions as far as political events. I think he's, and I've made predictions too that have come true, but with Sticks Hexenhammer, he kind of is able to take everything and condense it into the essential points. I mean, you'll see me on these long podcasts that take about an hour or 45 minutes or more. Sometimes I wonder if I could say the things that I want to say in a much shorter amount of time. Well, what he does is he records these videos and he uploads them. I used to be able to do that. May be able to do that in the future from. I'm gonna be trying to get a new desktop this weekend, so that I don't have to rely on this computer, which has been repaired. But if Styx Hexenhammer were to be removed from YouTube, first of all, a lot of his following, and he's laid the groundwork for it, would follow him to some of the alt tech outlets, such as BitChute, such as VidMe. He would definitely be able to survive what's been going on. I wonder if, I think they were supposed to work on my garbage disposal today. My dad would. So I don't know if he's going to show up. If he shows up, I'll probably cut the broadcast short, because it'll kind of be funky having to deal with the drill and everything like that. And of course, he'll be yelling back and forth with me. But anyway, if Styx Hexenhammer were to be removed, yes, a lot of his viewers would move over to BitChute. They'd move. There are other video platforms available. There's what's that? Dailymotion is pretty popular among some people for content that you can't find on YouTube, including music videos that aren't licensed to be on YouTube. So with that, yeah, YouTube would lose some of their following anyway, because they would, or some of their viewers anyway. Now, you might ask, even though Styx Hexenhammer 666 has about 183,000 subscribers on YouTube, that's still not it's not like it's millions and millions of people. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that for YouTube, they are, I think, of the mindset that, or at least some of the people driving them to ban people, they're of the mindset that by censoring people and banning them, you will get some of their viewers to go back and watch outlets like CNN and Fox News and the BBC, the mainstream media, basically. They don't understand that for every Styx Hexenhammer, there are 5 or 6 people that are. Your cough may be caused by your heat. If you have forced air, try putting open pans of water near the heat vents. I'll give it a shot. So I can see somebody's concerned here. Anyway, it's distracting me too, because I can hardly keep a sentence going. But anyway, with Styx Hexenhammer, there are plenty of people that are willing to step up that would fill the void, at least for a while. And that's where the illusion of YouTube being able to throttle people's opinions and their expression goes. That's why even people that heavily disagree with what I think about economics, about the Middle East, about the military defense, the military-industrial complex, people who think that even neocons or whatever, I say, what's the point of censoring them? The real decision about who has more valid opinions is based on who gets more support from the viewing public. And right now, the mainstream media is losing supporters, it's losing viewers, because they're untrustworthy. They're not trustworthy. Styx Hexenhammer and the select few other people on YouTube are able to garner the support that they have because they're able to give honest and accurate projections about how they think events will go. You'll see, last year during the election, Styx Hexenhammer, or Tar Warwick as his real name is, he would go and he would make predictions, not based on polling, not based on projections from Nate Silver and people like that, but based on some real observations of crowd size, of the general sentiment coming out of some of these states that were up for grabs. I also made some observations based the way I did it. You can go back. So this, I think, was my first or second video. I projected that Wisconsin would go for Donald Trump, and it wasn't based on some sort of clairvoyant ability of mine. It wasn't based on me knowing that he would, that somehow there's this wave of opposition to him. I simply looked at the maps from the primaries. I saw that Hillary Clinton had completely lost in almost, I mean, Bernie Sanders had wiped the floor with her in Wisconsin, which has long been just a bastion of liberal and progressive thought. You have Madison, which is a very progressive area. You have Milwaukee, which is obviously an urban area, a large black community. So of course they were going to vote heavily for her. The question would be in how many numbers and how many of the more rural counties would go vote for her. Well, it didn't take too long to look at the map, and you would see that in that case, it was a sea of Bernie green against a couple nuggets of Hillary gold in that election. And sure enough, a lot of those Bernie voters did not vote for Hillary Clinton on election day. They maybe didn't vote for Trump, but they didn't show up. They didn't show up at all. They might have voted for Jill Stein. I don't think that a lot of them voted at all. A lot of these voters they never committed to her. They never made that transition from seeing this woman who had basically written them off, not even paid attention to them, didn't show up there. And I think it was fairly obvious to me that in Wisconsin, in Michigan, I think another state I thought might flip to Donald Trump was Virginia. Was very close, by the way, very close. Even though Hillary did win Virginia, it was very close in the 2016 election. And what a lot of the neocons lose sight of is that Donald Trump came much closer to winning in Virginia than probably a moderate Republican would have. A moderate Republican would have been completely toasted by Hillary Clinton in Virginia because the state has been trending blue. And in order to get any chance of there being a fair fight there, you need to bring out a lot of the people who normally wouldn't be voting at all. And who does that better than Donald Trump? And that's why he lost by, I think it was about a percentage point to her in Virginia. And that's why Ed Gillespie, this establishment Bush, sponsor, this lobbyist, he got destroyed well, it's still this month, but the election earlier this month in Virginia. And that's about it. I think that Sticks, Hex, and Hammer, to get back to, I went off on a little tangent there. Sticks, Hex, and Hammer, if they were to ban him from YouTube, or if they were to somehow force his channel off or make him start from scratch, I fully predict somebody would fill in the void on YouTube. And beyond that, a lot of people would follow him to those alt-tech places. And that goes for any of these other outlets that they might want to ban, which are much larger, such as Paul Joseph Watson and InfoWars and Alex Jones. There's plenty of people willing to step into the void. There's plenty of imitators and copycats that are willing to come in there and to say, oh, he had 1,500,000 viewers and subscribers. I'm going to take a chunk out of that. And then, therefore, it's almost like they cut one head off of the Hydra and 3 heads grow in its place. That's the way it's working with the attempt to censor the independent media. Now, let's move on to the next topic. We're going to come back to the Clintons and the Obamas and Al Gore also today, a little closer to the end. But the next topic up was Egypt. Now, I had a number of friends in college that were from Egypt, by the way, and it was, I have to say, there were some of the greatest ones. Sorry, this guy wrote this hilarious comment. They were some of the best friends I ever had. They were some of the best people to party with. But these attacks in Egypt are not going to they're not going to be processed the proper way in the West. And it's the same idea that's happened with attacks in Iraq and attacks in other majority Islamic countries. What people in the West failed to process, people that are on the liberal side that don't understand the issues with Islam, is that Islamophobia is a joke. It's a topic that's been made up by people that don't want to have any sort of freedom of expression in Islamic countries. They want it to continue to be these archaic and medieval societies where there is no sense of equality, and they'll masquerade with some of these made up versions of Islam that they'll try to talk about the golden age of Islam, of the Abbasid Caliphate, which, for those of you that don't know, it was in Baghdad I think it was in the 1100s to 1200s, and not for far longer than that. That was an era of tolerance in Islam where they allowed many of the sciences and medicine and other speculative fields of human endeavors to flourish. And they think, well, we're promoting the real Islam. We're promoting the hashtag not all Islam. And that's what they will try to do. They'll try to deflect any criticisms of the religion as it really is, because the Abbasid Caliphate and this tolerant version of Islam and the religion of peace stuff, it is all a lot of posturing. If you look at Islamic fundamentalism and hardcore Islam and the proselytizing Islam that we've been seeing in recent years, it has nothing to do with the values of the Abbasid Caliphate. It has more to do with the values of more fanatical elements of Islam from previous generations, the Rashidun Caliphate, which was the original caliphate, which, if you look through history, all of the people that were at the head of the state during this time died by violent or very tragic circumstances, because it was basically a fanatical state. It was a fanatical state, and it could never succeed ever. It was kind of an anarchistic version of a combination of anarchism and extreme religious fanaticism. So this mosque attack, I'll show you. I think there's pictures here, but I don't think that the video works. I don't think there's even pictures here, but it says at least 235 people have been killed and dozens more injured after a suspected Islamic State bomb and gun attack on a mosque in Egypt. The country's government has declared 3 days of mourning following the assault on Al Rawda Mosque on Friday afternoon, one of the deadliest attacks in Egypt's modern history, which has wounded around 109 people. Officials said around 40 militants armed with guns arrived at the mosque, largely attended by Sufi Muslims and seen as non-believers by IS, or the Islamic State, in 4 off-road vehicles before detonating a bomb and opening fire from different directions, blowing up cars to block routes as people tried to escape. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack, which came as worshippers took part in weekly Friday prayers. But state news agency MENA reports that it appeared to have been carried out by IS. The Egyptian military began carrying out airstrikes in the area on Friday evening. I don't know how airstrikes are going to help this. It came an hour after President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi gave a televised address in which he vowed a brutal response to the criminal and cowardly attack following an emergency security meeting, insisting that it will not go unpunished. He added, "The army and police will avenge our martyrs and return security and stability with force in the coming short period." A local resident whose relatives were at the scene of the bomb and gun attack said they were shooting at people as they left the mosque. They were shooting at the ambulances too. Another local resident, Ashraf El-Hefni, said many of the victims were workers at a nearby salt firm. He added local people brought the wounded to the hospital on their own cars and trucks. So there's a lot of this stuff going on. It actually happened, they mentioned at the end, the attack comes days after a deadly bombing on a mosque in Nigeria, which killed at least 50 people. It says there's reports of abuse where captured militants have been executed by the military, so there's a lot of concerns that the way the government is approaching things is actually increasing militancy rather than decreasing it. So I don't know if, I hate it that you have to click twice in order to show the video here, in order to show the screen. So I don't know if you guys saw that. Catherine Horay says, craving greed is a symptom of stupidity and vanity. The ship floating at the top of the economic sewer think we're too ignorant to understand them, but we just refuse to sink their level to their level. And Augusto Pinochet says, I've got Coptic Christian friends from Egypt. It's bad, real bad. Yeah, I do too. I have a couple friends who are Coptic Christian. I have a couple that are, I think, Muslim from Egypt. I'm not really in contact with them anymore since we left college. But my best friend in college for a while was Coptic Christian from Egypt. He's moved to Cali, gone. Probably will never come back to Ohio, but with the new taxes and whatever, who's to say he might leave California for somewhere else. The issue with this topic is, hey Dean Kruger, The issue with this topic right now is that people will miss the whole point of this, which is that small blurb in the middle where it said that the mosque was mainly attended by Sufi Muslims. For those of you who don't know, Sufi Islam is not exactly a sect. It's more like a tendency where they believe more in mysticism and in some of the more holistic aspects of religion. There's similar counterparts in Christianity and Judaism, probably in other religions like Buddhism too. And the fundamentalist Muslims view them as complete heretics. They think that they are usurping the power of Islam and detracting from the monotheism of it, which I think is I think it's called Muwahidun. Let me see here. I forgot what the topic is, what the translation is. I think it's called Muwahidun. Or Tawheed, I think. Tawheed is the actual. Yeah. So here, I'll show you the Wikipedia page, but it's just, I mean, there's those of you that say Wikipedia is not reliable. Well, this is a pretty well-known topic. Tawheed is the oneness of God. That's why there's so many people that Linda Sarsour, for example, you'll see her point this finger up. And what the Sufis are accused of is they detract from the oneness of God, which I think, hold on, I'm going to stop sharing. So the oneness of God, I think, is that there's no problem with that. The issue the issue here is that they will take any sort of innovation called bay'ah. I think it's called bay'ah, and they will say it detracts from the fundamental belief in the oneness of God and in the doctrines of the Quran, and they're originalists. They're basically people that, and that's why if you think about it, here's where I'm going with this. If you think about it, this is why liberals who are into this in this hashtag not all and defending Islam despite all of its flaws, that they cannot be more full of shit when you really get down to it. Fundamentalist Islam is originalist, much more so than the most right-wing Republicans are. There are people that believe that you must literally follow the letter of the Quran forever. And any innovation, technological, social, or otherwise, has to be looked at as a heresy, and it must be completely eradicated. Gabriel Judah's Gaf Yusuf says all religions were constructed to control the masses. Well, I think if you look at the word religion, which I took a Black Studies course in college, a black religion course. The definition of religion comes from a Latin word that means the law or something. It's it is basically, yes, it is constructed to control the masses. The question is whether it affords them any degree of liberty. I think that there are religions that do afford a degree of liberty, and there's others that don't. And it's sort of a journey to discover what's the best way to get people to believe in a higher moral power, but without forcing them to basically throw away their independent will and their ability to make decisions on their own. And that's, I mean, I think he says here, Islam is nothing more than an evil cult. Well, and he misspelled Islam, so but Islam, let me tell you something. A lot of the harsher criticisms of Islam are, they have a lot of validity to them. What is more important in my mind is to remember that by defending Islam to the hilt, these liberals are destroying the not all Islams, the not all Muslims, because a lot of these Muslims that are being slaughtered, like the ones today in Egypt, earlier today in the early hours of the Egyptian clock, the Egyptian day. A lot of them were the type of Muslims that are used by the liberals as a justification for why we shouldn't hate all Muslims. Well, what are the not all Muslims doing? They're killing the not all Muslims, because for them, their modernist approaches to religion and to practice of the religion are a deviance. They're a heresy. So what you're seeing when you see groups like CARE and groups like the Democratic Party and the Labor Party stand up for for these hardcore fanatics, you're seeing them stand against religious liberty. Religious liberty would mean that you say to these people, screw you. Screw you. We are going to stand up for all types of Islam, no matter how hardcore and intolerant they are. And moderate Muslims, they are they give lip service to moderate Muslims. Gabriel asks, do you mean moderate Muslims? No, that's not what I mean. I mean that there are sects within Islam that are, it's not a matter of moderate, it's a matter of the actual beliefs. That they have actual differences of belief, such as the Nizaris, such as parts of Shia Islam that are not political. I mean, the Nizaris would be one example, but there's a number of them. There's the Ismailis. What they are doing is they're using them as a shield. The liberals are using them as a shield, saying not all Muslims are fundamentalist. But when it comes to actually defending the rights and safety of those Muslims that are not fanatical, hardcore members of the Sunni and Wahhabi Muslims, they're nowhere to be found. They're nowhere to be found. They could care less. Those people that died in the mosque today, there's not going to be a tear shed by CARE or any of the other so-called defenders of the Islamic minority in the West. They don't care about them, because in their worldview, those people are heretics just as well. They won't come out and say it. They won't celebrate the massacre. But what they will do is they will minimize the importance of the deaths of these people. And instead, they will whine about somebody's hijab getting ripped off, whether or not that happened. They will come and they'll attack various practices of institutions such as schools that don't include every single aspect of Islamic practice as something that they'll facilitate. I'll tell you what, on Monday, we had at work, we had our Thanksgiving company meal. Okay, and I'm Jewish. I don't eat pork. I don't eat a lot of I don't eat shrimp. There was virtually nothing that I could eat. And I came upstairs and I think I had corn chips and a little cornbread and maybe some other some other finger foods, because I couldn't eat anything. But it's not as if I went up to the company head and I said, well, this is not right. I can't eat around people that are eating pork. I had to sit across the table from a couple people that were eating pork, and I had to take it like a man. And I didn't stay there the whole time, but the point is that in my religion, in reality, and if you see otherwise, then those people, I don't see where they get their justification for it. But in my religion, you cannot impose your social standards, your dietary standards, or your needs on the community around you. Our religion does believe that there are certain people like us that are not allowed to eat, pork or shrimp or anything, and we don't do it. And we try as best as we can. I try as best as I can to, stay within the bounds, and I could probably do better. But I don't go to people and say, look, you can't have your spare ribs or whatever it is. So let me see a couple of these comments here. Gabriel says you don't need a religion to be a good person. Well, that's a huge debate right now that I've seen people have, and I'd say no, you don't need religion to be a good person, but in order to have a good society, you can't have an absence of religion at all. You can't have a society in general that has an absence of religion that invalidates the concept of religion, because that inevitably it shifts the moral compass to being centered around some sort of totalitarian figure, or people start seeking out that type of figure to give them order in their lives. That's what you're seeing in countries like Sweden, countries like Germany, where people who became the secular, their families became secularized through decades after World War II. They left Christianity, they left Lutheranism, whatever it is. Not that I'm advocating Lutheranism or Catholicism, but I'm just using them as an example. Well, when they came to a time when they needed spirituality in their lives, where did it come from? In a lot of cases, it came from Islam. You see a lot of these Europeans converting to Islam. Does it make sense? It would make sense if you realize that in the absence of a religious society, there's a lot of people that will seek out spirituality, and atheism does not provide that, and that should be obvious. I mean, it's part of the definition of it. Catherine Horay says, that's the best explanation of religion I've ever heard. Thanks. Well, you can thank my Marxist Black Studies and religion professor who said that. He was, by the way, despite his beliefs, was a very, very good person at explaining a lot of these religious concepts. You know, he was a Marxist. He was a fan of Fidel Castro. He knew his stuff about religion, and I'll give him that. Augusto Pinochet says, everyone looks at religion by putting modern conditions into ancient times. We need to walk a mile, so to speak. Yeah, that is a huge issue. I saw Gabriel's already. Catherine says, you can say that about the KKK and Westboro Baptist Church and Christianity too. You can't allow haters to define a faith. Well, fanaticism in Christianity is not as big of an issue today because of the Protestant Reformation. You have to realize that whether you are Christian or not, the reason we have the United States as it is, as a society that has separation of church and state, was because of the Protestant Reformation in Germany, England, and the Netherlands, I guess, where they decided that there would be religious pluralism. Otherwise, there's never been a case where the KKK was the dominant religious sect of American society. They had great political power. They could draw on power from church leaders. They could use Christianity as a cloak for what they wanted to do, but it was never an established religion in America. So for people to keep using the KKK and the Westboro Baptist Church, there were far more limited phenomena. Now, if you bring up groups like that, which are technically, they fit the profile of a cult, which is a cult is an arbitrary definition. But if you want to talk about why are there so many Christian cults in the United States, that is a negative side effect of the Protestant Reformation, where suddenly anybody can open a church, and then they can decide based on their own standards and based on their own personal beliefs. They can disregard some of the basic principles of the mother church or whatever it comes from. So that therefore you have all these people who become egomaniacs, like Jim Jones, the father of the People's Temple, like David Koresh, the father of the Branch Davidians, if you remember Waco. They're able to do that because we have freedom of religion, and it's something that we as a nation, the United States has to suffer through more than a lot of other nations, but it's happened in other countries. It's happened in Japan. If you've heard of Aum Shinrikyo, that's not a Christian fundamentalist cult. That was a Buddhist fringe offshoot, but it happens, and it's part of that freedom that we get to enjoy. Unfortunately, freedoms can be abused. Gabriel says belief equals brainwashed. Well, there's people who believe. I mean, people believe in UFOs. Is there definitive proof of it? Does that mean you're brainwashed? Everything, a belief is a belief because you may or may not have proof of it. Once you have proof of something, once you're able to point to proof of it, it becomes an opinion. Then there's different grades of that. What's going on here? Gabriel also says, well, Dan C says, not all, but there sure as hell are enough. Yep. These Muslims use their faith as a weapon, says Gabriel. And then Catherine says, the people you work with aren't very considerate of you. Do they know you couldn't eat the stuff they offered? Well, they did know, but that doesn't mean, like, my point being, if I work at a company, as I do, that the majority of people are Catholic, which I think that they are. I think the majority of the people I work with are Catholic. I am not going to go to their party and tell them what they can or can't bring. Now, the question is, should I have gone to them and said, well, I need an alternative. I can't eat the stuff that you're going to eat. No. No, well, actually, yeah, I could have done that, but I kind of knew that it's going to be an issue ahead of time, getting them to bring something special, and then people would be like, so instead, I actually brought lunch that day, and after the party, I went downstairs and ate lunch, which I'm perfectly fine with it. Gabriel says, each to their own, but when you start to try and impose their faith and beliefs on me, then in my opinion, it is wrong. Yep. Mad Dodge Productions, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Try to take my bacon, I dare you. Okay, I'll issue a guarantee. My personal guarantee is I won't take your bacon. Gabriel says, I blame today's teachers for filling today's youth with white guilt, amongst other things, communism for another. And then he says, Jews don't seem to be very popular these days. Well, when you have people that are mainline Hollywood producers that are getting accused of decades of sex crimes, and then there's all sorts of enablers in there. Well, I'm sorry to say that I have to be, I'm not going to try to defend those people, but that it does create a horrible reputation for the community as a whole. And it's first of all, it's separate from the religious element. You're not allowed to do the things that Harvey Weinstein did. And I think we're seeing just like I think that there's a spiritual void, a spiritual vortex in Christian society in the West. There's a huge spiritual vortex and void in the Jewish community in the West. A lot of them turned to atheism because of a rejection of religion in general, which may sound redundant, but they were people who were raised in homes where the emphasis on Judaism as a religion was diminished, but the emphasis on being a Jew as an identity was emphasized. And that's a problem, because you can't take one element of your identity and and emphasize it if it's the least important part. The least, because they're being Jewish is possible even if you're from China. You can become a member of the religion if you're a Chinese person. It's happened. I've seen it. I've met Chinese people who converted. I've met people from you like that, Catherine? I met people from Ireland, from I'd say parts of Africa. The racial and genetic makeup of somebody, that's part of what could make you Jewish. It does not encompass what the whole idea is about. The idea stretches back to a belief system. And if you don't even want to learn about the belief system, then you're missing a massive part of what you are. It's almost like thinking that you can jump onto an iceberg and make it float around. No, the iceberg is pretty deep. Should have brought some tea. Catherine says the point I was trying to make is that their hatred doesn't define my faith. Gabriel says, no one has proved to me that there is a God, but I don't hold people's faith against them. Well, maybe the mud slimes. Well, maybe you've had bad experiences with them where, obviously there's bad news about them. And then he says, plan ahead, good idea. Central banks are blamed on Jews. Well, central banking, you know what? Maybe one day, I'm not going to do a stream today. I'll give you an idea of why there is a large amount of Jews in the banking system. To put a long story short, for a long time, Jews were prohibited from being in other professions, so they had to become lenders. Now, does that justify the central banking system? No, that would be ridiculous. Did you see Jordan Peterson's response to the TA getting censured at Laurier? I saw something. I think I saw God Saad's response. Now, I've covered all the comments so far, so let me get back to the topics I wanted to talk about. Basically, the bottom line with Egypt is that we see today there's Muslims that are of a belief system that does permit people to believe otherwise, and they're being slaughtered, and the West could care less. The people of the West, the liberal and labor and far left elements of the West, they don't care about those Muslims. They're basically, they are a human shield for their agenda of gaining votes and thinking, well, a lot of these Muslims are going to be moving into our countries. They're going to be loyal voters. They don't care that the Muslims that truly need protection from bigotry are actually seeking that protection from fundamentalist hardcore Muslims that they are protecting, that the left is protecting. And I'm sorry to say, that I have to use this as as kind of a point to explain how that's happening. This as a learning example, what happened in Egypt. So on a lighter note, we're going to be talking about Germany for a second. If you didn't know, Angela Merkel, she had her government fall apart last week. How does that work? If you're in the United States, we have two parties in Congress, and they don't elect the president. The American people elect the president through the Electoral College. That's not how it works in Germany. So imagine that every state in Germany has a certain amount of seats in the Bundestag, which is their parliament. All right. And they also have a proportional number of seats federally, okay, in the Bundestag that are elected proportionally. So if you had, let's say, Bernie Sanders were to have his own party and he were to poll 17%, then his party would earn 17% of the seats in that parliament. That's the way it works in Germany. For those of you that have never heard of proportional representation, I know among some people on the progressive left, they're talking about it. They're interested in it happening, and there are certain advantages to it. What did happen last month, I believe, or was it 2 months ago, the Germans had an election, and let me see if I can pull it up. German federal election. So Germany had an election, and it didn't go well for Angela Merkel, who's their longtime, she's their chancellor. In Germany, the prime minister is called the chancellor. So you can see here, her party lost 65 seats in the Bundestag. Her main rival, the Social Democratic Party, SPD, you can see, I don't think you guys can see my cursor. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So they lost about 40 seats, and they probably should have lost more. And then you had a third party, the further right Alternative for Germany, who are often mistakenly or deliberately represented in the media as being like almost a neo-Nazi party. They gained 94 seats. They were a first-time party to run in the Bundestag, and they won 94 seats. You can see some of the other third parties they gained, and this is the way their electoral map works. And you notice there's not just two. It's not like you see just red and blue. You see here there's black. Black is the party of the Christian Democratic Union, and you also have blue, which is their allies. Those are the Christian Social Union. They're in Bavaria, so they earned all these seats. All right. And then you have the red, which is the Social Democrats, and then you have this turquoise, which is the Alternative for Germany. But then you can see this little area over here. These are the proportional representation seats. So essentially what this means is that, and I think it's a good idea, that you have some seats that are directly tied to a certain area of the country, the same way that we have in Congress, and there are certain seats that are independent of them. So you have people that are elected federally. So people can choose on the federal level that they want this party, the Social Democrats, let's say, for example, who are the most pro-European party in the German parliament. The Christian Democrats, who are also a pro-European party, but you can also have the Alternative for Germany earn a number of seats, and they are a very Eurosceptic party, talking about Brexit. And what happened was that once the election shaked out, the Social Democrats did not want to join the coalition because it would essentially mean that they don't even have a platform anymore, that their platform means nothing, because no matter what, they'll join a coalition with the governing Christian Democrats, and that there is no social democratic party. They don't believe in a lot of these ideas for expanding the welfare state that they claim to, because if they always join the government in their coalition, no matter what, then it means nothing. So then what happens in that case? Okay, the top party, the top second party, sorry, the runner-up party does not join the coalition. Sometimes it's possible for the first party to achieve the majority number of seats in Germany. I think it's a little rare for that to happen. So they had this idea of forming the Jamaica coalition. And why do they call it the Jamaica coalition? It's because you'll have the party's colors are black, green, and yellow, like the colors of the Jamaican flag. Those are the Greens, who are a far left party, the Free Democrats, who are yellow, who are kind of a fiscally conservative party. They're in favor of trimming the welfare state. And you have the black, which is the Christian Democrats, and probably the blue too, which is the Christian Social Union. So essentially, there were talks about that, and it fell apart because the Green Party wants more immigration into Germany and the EU, and the Free Democrats were saying, "Oh, hold on, this will end up causing our state budgets to increase. We'll have to spend more money on this," and this is exactly what we were running against. Even though we're a liberal party, we're liberal, but we want to decrease the welfare state. So essentially, what this means is that Angela Merkel, this is somebody, she's not going to have the Social Democrats come into the coalition, because it would be political suicide for them. They would lose even more next time. Then you're not going to have the Jamaica coalition, because the Free Democrats can't cooperate with the Greens, and she's not going to form a coalition with the Alternative for Germany, because she's super pro-EU and they're anti-EU, they're Eurosceptic. So she doesn't have any options. She could go and there's the Left Party, which is also Eurosceptic, even though they're on the left. So she's basically dug herself in a hole, and there might be another election happening today. Then Gabriel says, Goldman Sachs, and then he says, I thought Muslims hated Jews. Doesn't this bother you? Of course it bothers me. You're not listening to what I'm saying here. Okay? I'm saying that when you allow fundamentalist Islamic terror to come into the West, and you don't criticize it, and instead you focus on Islamophobia, then you eliminate whatever normal Muslim sects there are going to be, because those are going to be persecuted anyway under fundamentalist Islam. There are normal sects that are I'm not going to say that they're consistent with Western values all the way. I don't think that there are religions that are consistent with liberal values all the way. That's not the point. The point of having a liberal, so religious liberty, okay, and let's not call it a liberal society, but religious liberty is that even religions that contradict each other, that have deep theological differences, are able to coexist side by side. When you have a religion that's fundamentally opposed to this, like much of these Muslim immigrants believe in, then of course you can't have that come in. That's why I think that this Egypt situation is so important, because you can see in their country how they're treating the nonconformist Muslims, the Sufis. Therefore, why let them in? Why let them in? Those are the ones that are going to come in, and when they come in, the dissident Muslims that came before them, they're going to be facing the same issues that they did back in Egypt or back in Iraq, wherever it is. It's the same problem. You're just You're not alleviating any of the refugee problems. Instead, you're importing all of their problems. What the real answer is to force their home countries to deal with this issue. That's why immigration is such a huge problem in the West, because we import the problems that those countries have. And so, of course, I mean, and you know, to ask if I think if this bothers me because they hate the Jews, of course it does, but that's not the point here. The point here is that they hate everybody. You know, so I don't see why it's unclear here. When you have people coming into the United States or into the United Kingdom, in fact, if I think Gabriel Judas is from the United Kingdom, and you could probably answer it. I think last year in Scotland there was a man who was murdered, a Muslim man who was murdered, and they said it was an Islamophobic crime. Well, it turned out after some investigation, no, it was a Muslim of the Ahmadiyya sect. I'll even pull it up. Scotland murder. Yeah, here we go. This popped up right away. This is what I'm talking about. This was August 9th, 2016. It says, man who murdered Glasgow shopkeeper Assad Shah in sectarian attack was jailed. Tanvir Ahmed was sentenced to 27 years for an attack on Assad Shah motivated by Shah's religious views. And it says Ahmed, 32, a Sunni Muslim, confessed to confronting and then attacking Shah because the news agent was an open adherent of the Ahmadi branch of Islam, which believes the Prophet Muhammad was not the final Muslim prophet. So this is what I'm talking about, that even people, the Ahmadi Muslims, by the way, have not been implicated in a single terrorist attack anywhere. None. It's not like with the Shia Muslims where there are Shia Muslim terrorist groups. So you have non-terroristic sects that are coming to the West, and we're importing the people who persecuted here to the West to make their lives miserable the same way that they were back in their home country. How about you chew on that? If that's not clear as to why this is a problem, then I think that you might be able to get a career in politics in Germany now, because that's their attitude over there. So with the Germans, there could be another election next year, and I believe, and I'm going to continue to believe, that next year the European Union will probably fall apart. You know, we'll start to see really structurally it doesn't have any future. Maybe the Germans will take a while to really climb aboard this, because they're the main people boosting the European Union. They're the main people who want to hold it together, because economically it makes a lot of sense for them. They have much more control. Economically, they basically dominate the EU now. And now that the British are leaving, they're going to dominate it even more. But once you see countries like Italy start to vote against EU policies, and probably, I believe that there will be an Italy exit vote coming up sometime next year, because they're not going to be taking this shit. I think that you will see Germans start to realize that there is no future. You're going to see, once you have countries leaving, this is why it's so stupid that there's people in Scotland that say, well, we want to leave the UK in order to rejoin the EU. Well, if the EU is falling apart and there is no EU left to join, they're going to feel really stupid. They're going to look back on it and realize, what the hell was I thinking? The European Union is, I hate to call it the Obamacare of Europe, because there's certainly differences between the two. But the European Union, it was unsustainable as a democratic enterprise. That's why they made it undemocratic, because there's no logical reason why people in Norway and people in Greece would vote for the same interests if they have different economic interests. So you're taking people with different cultures, different value systems, different approaches to industry, different you know, different climates. Even the climate of Northern Europe is more wintry. It's more Arctic in some cases even. Then you go down to Greece. It's a Mediterranean climate. There's virtually nothing in common between Northern and Southern Europe that would bring them together in a single government. And because they're demonstrably hostile to Christian identity, and I'm using Christian identity in a very general way, not in the way that some people on the far right use it. The idea that there is a common heritage in Christianity, because the EU is so hostile towards that, they eliminate one of the greatest resources they could use to bring about European unity. Now, you know, that's a separate issue, whether it would be Orthodox identity or Catholic identity or Lutheran identity. But the EU is basically trying to, you know, destroy people's identities in any case. They don't believe that Spaniards should be Spaniards, and even that Catalonians should be Catalonians, and that Italians should. They believe everybody should be a European citizen, and that's it. And your subregions, they're basically provinces of this greater Europe. So I think that Angela Merkel's days as the leader of Germany, they're starting to look very like they're in their twilight. She's not going to be able to command as much of a loyalty if she can't cobble together a government, if there's no legitimacy in the minds of her constituents for her continuing to be the leader of her country, which is, it's falling apart right now. The German idea of allowing in all of these immigrants. It may take longer than the other countries, but it is going to happen. So yeah, no more comments. With Zimbabwe, yeah, I think Zimbabwe, we're going to wait till Sunday. And let me get back to the Clinton and Obama feud, which I think is going to become much more of an issue in the coming weeks. So let me get rid of some of these articles here. I have this article here that I think will amuse a lot of us to read. It's called, "Here's Your Leftover Turkey, the Case for Hillary Clinton 2020. Yeah, you're really reading this, and it's not a joke. Some people are really trying to say that somebody who lost a primary election to Barack Obama, somebody who lost the general election to Donald friggin' Trump, that she should be the candidate for president in 2020 and that she'll win." But he writes here, "Are you sick of Republicans or just right-wingers in general? Do you want to send a message to Washington that you aren't going to buy into their racist, sexist, xenophobic, homophobic, and classist nonsense for 1 second longer? Then do the very thing Donald Trump unintentionally encouraged in a recent tweet. Encourage Hillary Clinton to run for president in 2020. And then it shows his tweet, "Crooked Hillary Clinton is the worst and biggest loser of all time. She just can't stop, which is so good for the Republican Party. Hillary, get on with your life, and I give it another try, in 3 years." So it says, I'm sure this is the part where the Clinton haters, be they the Trumpsters, Bernie Bros, or anything in between, will say something to the effect of course he wants her to run again. That's the only way he'll get reelected. And then it says, slow your roll there. Clinton's poll numbers aren't too good right now. Okay, they're downright atrocious, but there are still 4 great reasons to consider choosing her as a Democratic nominee in 2020. Even better, all but one of them has to do with an emotion that has no place in this season, which is why I absolutely had to write this article for Thanksgiving weekend. Spite, delicious, nutritious spite. And he says, Hillary Clinton is the Winston Churchill to Vladimir Putin's Adolf Hitler. He says, I agree with the basic principle of Godwin's law. The first person to invoke Hitler in a political debate should normally lose. Well, this guy lost in the first paragraph when he said Clinton should run for president again. The exception, of course, has to be when someone has genuine Hitler-like qualities. A foreign despot who has invaded neighboring countries and has a right-wing nationalist agenda is about as Nazi-like as you can get. This is where Clinton offers a quality that no politician in America can beat. While Republicans are trying to tar her with a bogus scandal connecting her to Russia, and anyone who believes Clinton did something wrong in the Uranium One deal lacks credibility on all matters political, the reality is that no candidate can be better described as Russia's nemesis than Clinton. Putin has always hated Clinton because of his innate sexism, which has manifested in his policies, and she certainly didn't endear herself to him by publicly criticizing Russian corruption in 2012 and 2011. As the ample connections between the Trump campaign and Russia or its water carriers like WikiLeaks clearly demonstrate, the one person we know we can trust more than anyone is a candidate who Putin very obviously did not want to see as America's president. So let's go blow by blow with this. This is great. So I do need a haircut. Maybe I can get one on Tuesday. So think about this. They're calling him a right-wing Hitler-like dictator because he invaded Ukraine. Now, Hitler would not have stopped in eastern Ukraine. He would have gone the whole way through and conquered the entire country. That's first things first. Second thing. So also I think he had a war with Georgia a few years ago. I think it was in 2008. But he never conquered Georgia. And what Putin does is it's not like it's something that's good. It's not like he's a well-behaved person and that he's a great friend to have. But to compare Vladimir Putin to Adolf Hitler or any of these other despots of the past, I think you kind of lose perspective of what's going on. Vladimir Putin, you could use the same qualities to describe Hillary Clinton. This is somebody who voted for the Iraq War in the Senate. Okay, we invaded Iraq unprovoked at the time. It's not like Iraq was a great country, but we didn't have to go into Iraq. It wasn't an unavoidable conflict. We have a couple more comments here. Catherine says, because the EU have hitched their wagon to the Wahhabi, Jamal Thomas of Progressive Soapbox YouTube channel tore that author apart this morning. It was a good time for us all. I'm not a huge fan of Jamal Thomas, but I could imagine he'd have a lot to say about that. Pinochet says, did they really just call right-wingers classist? Holy crap. Well, that's another thing. He says that Donald Trump is classist. It's not like Hillary Clinton was a woman of the people. She was somebody who spent last year basically clubbing around with Goldman Sachs bankers who Gabriel had he brought up as if, that, okay, Goldman Sachs, Hillary Clinton was in deep cahoots with them. This is somebody who, you want to talk about sexism, she harassed her husband's sexual harassment accusers. So for anybody to call anybody else sexism and then support Hillary Clinton, call somebody else sexist and then support Hillary Clinton, I think it just takes a tremendous amount of blindness, of self-denial. And she compares him to Winston. He compares her to Winston Churchill. Well, Winston Churchill, deeply flawed world leader, but a great world leader nevertheless, was somebody who, he had to deal with the coming of Germany's expansion throughout Europe. Now he had to fight against denialists in his own party. Do you understand that? There were people in the Conservative Party before Churchill came to power, like Neville Chamberlain, that said, well, you're ridiculous. You have no clue what you're talking about. Hitler's not going. We have this agreement. We're going to have this agreement in Munich, and he's not going to invade anybody after Czechoslovakia. Well, they proved to be wrong. In the case of Putin and Clinton, this was somebody, she pushed the reset button in 2009 with Putin. And she said, well, we're just going to let bygones be bygones. Even though you had a war with Georgia a few years ago, we're just going to let bygones be bygones. So she's the opposite of Winston Churchill. She's somebody who actively denied totally the influence of Russia. Okay? So then, they said that she publicly criticized Russian corruption in 2011. Well, why then? Let me see here. Putin Clinton Foundation. So it says 2 months into her term as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton's foundation invited Vladimir Putin, along with other prominent heads of state, to the Clinton Global Initiative's 2009 annual gathering, emails obtained by the watchdog group Judicial Watch revealed. So she didn't really, like, she was criticizing their corruption after she had them come to her gala for her quote unquote charity in order to milk them for funds. So how can you criticize corruption if you also solicit donations from it? That's not a woman of principle. Welcome to the Rapper 10,000. Oh, there are some anti-Trump protests here in Chicago on Black Friday. Are they by shoppers? And then Dean Kruger says, yeah. So, you know, it's hilarious watching people try to justify Hillary Clinton. Now, this was only reason one. The second reason, Hillary Clinton being elected president at last would monumentally piss off misogynistic trolls, and what's not to like about that? And then he says, I can't think of a single political figure in recent American history who has been hated as deeply or for as long as Hillary Clinton. From the moment she emerged on the national stage in 1992 as a distinctly feminist perspective first lady, she has been the target of right-wing wrath, woefully out of proportion to anything she has ever said or done. The reason for this is sexism. It's not the chic thing to say right now, but no other explanation really makes sense. Yes, Hillary Clinton is more centrist than either party likes these days. Let me just show you this. But why is she singled out for opprobrium when her husband, who actually served as president, remains popular despite holding the exact same views? The same point can be made about the claim that she is corrupt or too establishment. To the extent that these accusations are valid, they are no more true of Clinton than of the vast majority of politicians from both parties, especially Trump. At the very least, the next Democratic presidential candidate needs to be a woman, perhaps not Clinton specifically, but certainly a woman, to offset the symbolic gut punch of the first female candidate getting cheated by an overt misogynist. And speaking of cheating, so, you know, this completely ignores all the evidence we've heard in the past weeks, and even admissions by people like Donna Brazile, which she tried to walk back, that the Democrats cheated Bernie Sanders out of the nomination. If you're a person, doesn't matter what sex you are, who gets to the nomination through cheating, through defrauding the process, through tampering with the process by financially controlling the party as a whole before you get the nomination, like she did, then it shouldn't matter what you have between your legs. You should be disqualified forever from running for the party nomination. Now, the Democratic Party, the DNC, has refused to do that because they're afraid they'll scare away some Hillary donors. And that shows the attitude of the party. That shows the attitude of this writer who wrote, the same point can be made about the claim that she is corrupt or too establishment. To the extent that these accusations are valid, they are no more true of Clinton than of the vast majority of politicians from both parties, especially Trump. What this essentially means is that she's okay with a degree of corruption that first of all, he doesn't even want to talk about, so he can't know how severe it is, right? If he's not willing to talk about the corruption itself, and he's deliberately glossing over it, then apparently he doesn't realize how deep and far-reaching it's been. Because I've done several times, I could go back to the days in Arkansas, talk to you about their corruption, which would take too much time today, which I don't have. Instead, he's saying, well, because there's so many people that are corrupt, including Donald Trump, and he says especially Trump is corrupt, then that's not really an issue. He says that because Bill Clinton remains popular, even though he has virtually the same policies that she would have advocated for, then what's the problem? We should elect her. Well, a lot of people, especially on the left, this is what he's trying to do. He's trying to deflect and say, well, it's only right-wing, inbred, sexist, misogynistic, homophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic Republicans who are against Hillary Clinton. That's not, I mean, there's even people who are probably watching this stream right now who are progressive, who are against you know, big banks who are for regulating Wall Street that hate Hillary Clinton. And why would they vote for somebody like that again, who will stab them in the back? Because this just reinforces the same problems. Bill Clinton was a horrible president for people who believe in progressivism. He repealed Glass-Steagall. She never committed to reintroducing Glass-Steagall. That's why a lot of the Bernie bros, as they're derisively called, as if calling them, you know, they like to pretend that it's only these male sexist, you know, hard lefties that are Bernie supporters. Well, a lot of them happen to be women, and a lot of them might like, you know, one or two Bernie policies or the general idea. They're not on board with everything he does. There's a lot of independently thinking people that voted for Bernie Sanders. There's probably a few that voted for Hillary Clinton. I can say I voted for Trump, and I don't agree with several things that he's done. But these writers, like the guy in Salon, this Matt Rojar, or whatever his name is, Matthew Roja, they would like to deny that. They want that binary world where there's only two opinions. There's the sexists, and then there's the progressives. And that's the way he wants it to look. So we're going to get to point 3 after this. So, no, I'm gonna read the comments at the end, but I will try to get to all the comments, guys. So keep it going. Talk amongst yourselves. Do whatever. Talk amongst yourselves. Anybody remember Mike Myers? Michael, was it? Yeah, Mike Myers from Saturday Night Live in the '90s. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm very verklempt. Exactly. If anybody knows that, what's the name of the skit that I'm talking about? If somebody could type in the chat. If anybody recognizes that, extra points for you. You get I mean, you can have this broken mouse USB. I'll personally mail it to you. So, point 3. This is a shorter article, so if you're getting impatient, don't worry. It says, by winning the popular vote convincingly in 2016, Hillary Clinton has earned the right to be considered the presumptive nominee in 2020, right? Which will bring us, I'm teasing, to another candidate that did the same thing. And it says, as I wrote in September, Clinton is the first defeated presidential candidate to win the popular vote without being automatically considered a frontrunner in the next election. 2 of the previous 4 popular vote winning also-rans were actually elected in the subsequent cycle. Andrew Jackson in 1828 and Grover Cleveland in 1892, while 2 others were widely regarded as frontrunners before dropping out for personal reasons, which are Samuel Tilden and Al Gore. Let us not forget that for all the smack talk about how poorly Clinton ran her campaign, she bested Trump by nearly 3 million votes. This was no razor-thin margin of victory, but a decisive expression of the American public's preference. In terms of percentage points, her margin of victory was roughly comparable to that by which Jimmy Carter beat Gerald Ford in 1976 or George Bush beat John Kerry in 2004. She also held Trump to a lower percentage of the popular vote than that garnered by Mitt Romney in 2012. Lower percentage does not mean less votes, by the way. So in 2012, less people voted, but Romney gained a larger percentage of that amount of people. In 2016, more people voted, and Donald Trump gained. Therefore, Donald Trump is more popular than Mitt Romney because more people came out to vote for him. And then 4, it says we can expect her to be a good president. Frankly, the worst thing that can be said about a potential 2020 Clinton candidacy, especially in America's current cultural and political climate, is that her husband still hasn't answered for the numerous sexual abuse allegations against him. While it may seem unfair for Hillary to be held accountable for Bill's alleged predations, it can be plausibly argued that she played a role in helping him cover them up. If that is ever proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then she should be given the heave-ho. Then again, Bill Clinton is also widely associated with the economic. So that here he is, like gaslighting people. Bill Clinton, the gaslighting, by the way, is not the term I usually use, but I'll use it because it's very convenient. Bill Clinton is also widely associated with the economic, social, and foreign policy conditions of the beloved 1990s and is greatly missed for that reason. And since few dispute that Hillary was her husband's co-president during the halcyon decade, that association can still remain a giant advantage. Finally, and most importantly, Clinton demonstrated through the 2016 Democratic National Committee platform that she would work with progressives on pursuing a progressive agenda very close to their own goals on issues ranging from raising the minimum wage and fighting global warming to scaling back the war on drugs. She would stand exactly where the majority of grassroots activists in the party want her to be. Plus, while this has been noted countless times before, it deserves repetition. She has ample experience as a U.S. Senator and Secretary of State in actually getting things done. That ability to get things done, by the way, is why Clinton had high approval ratings as Secretary of State, usually in the 60s, even proving more popular than President Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden in 2011 and 2012. Her stock may be low now, but it's been low in the past, such as when she, quote unquote, ran to be First Lady in 1992. And it has always recovered. Arguably, the big political question facing a potential Hillary 2020 campaign will be whether that bounce occurs at a fortuitous moment for her. It very well could, and wouldn't that be a giant helping of the dish best served cold? Hold on. I have to mute this. So let me refute those last 2 points. Okay. The first point about her winning the popular vote. The popular vote, I'm sorry to say, is irrelevant in this situation. For those progressives or liberals that want to talk about making the popular vote the most important thing to be considered in any election, remember that in California in 2008, Proposition 8, the state voted 55 to 45 against gay marriage. Nobody stood up for the popular vote at that time. What did they do? They sued at the Supreme Court level and eventually won. So that's not recognizing the popular vote. Now, I'm not telling you to say, I don't, I'm not telling them to accept that gay marriage should be overturned on those grounds. I'm just saying that it's very convenient for them to complain about the popular vote when it supposedly goes their way in a situation where it doesn't matter. Everybody knows that in presidential elections, certain states like California are going to go for liberals. Therefore, more Democrats are going to come out to vote than Republicans, because a lot of Republicans come in, they look at the poll numbers, it says that their preferred candidate, whoever it is down 20 points in their state. They may not even go out and vote. They might not even vote for president. They might just vote for local officials or something. So you have low voter participation among a certain sector of the public there. If you go to a different state, such as, I don't know, Wyoming, a much more rural state, which with a record of voting Republican since 1964, well, you might not get that many progressive or liberal voters to come out. So you get basically the voter turnout is largely affected by the expectations of the public. If the public doesn't think that they have a candidate that they want to support that has a chance of winning in their state, then they're not going to come out to vote. Now, if you eliminate the Electoral College, you do change the game a lot, but it could not work in your favor. If you make it so that it's proportional on the national level, who is going to win? If you say it's going to be a direct vote on the national level, popular vote, person A and person B, well, it might not stop at person A and person B. You might get this development of a truly multi-candidate system where there's going to be more and more parties that are going to be able to put up a candidate at the national level. And then, and that could be a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but these Democrats that insist that, the popular vote is what should really matter. Well, in this case, the popular vote is a meaningless statistic. The popular vote is almost like, I would say, batting average on a team that has no pitching. Okay? You could get as many hits as you want, but if the other team is putting in more runs, then you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to lose the game. And that's the problem with the Democratic Party. They have very good turnout in states like New Jersey, Maryland. I'd say, what's another big blue state? Massachusetts, California, Oregon, and Washington. And you'll see, if you look at the electoral maps of a lot of these states, it's an island. I'll just pick out one. Let's say, don't go away, guys. I'll just pick out the state of Washington in 2012. Okay, so you see, it's almost, and this isn't like the most extreme case, but you see the state is divided east-west. You have the western part of the state, especially Puget Sound region. Over here, it's strongly Democratic. You look in the eastern part of the state, it's mostly Republicans, right? And if you eliminate the Electoral College, then the strength of Washington as a state, its ability to actually affect national matters, goes down. Okay, it can't sustain the same amount of importance because that pool of voters gets distributed among the entire country. Okay, now there's also a problem that as it is today, that strength, those votes do lose their strength because the Democrats can take it for granted that they're going to win Washington, because there is no candidate that will run in Washington on a more progressive agenda and hope to win, because the Democrats are they're campaigning at the national level and they're saying you should support us because unfortunately, yes, we would like more progressive people to win, but we have the national platform, we have the exposure, we have ballot access everywhere. So this guy is giving the most establishment justification for his candidacy. And it's my opinion that, you know, people have already seen right through this. It's not going to go anywhere. Nobody wants Hillary Clinton back. Let me see if I can get back to that story. What was the last point? It was that we can expect her to be a good president because she like he uses the same propaganda that she was using during the campaign that was failed propaganda, because she said that she's a progressive that gets things done. That was during her campaign against Bernie. And what did the progressive voters, what did the common rural voters who are not necessarily progressive, but they're against big banks, they're against payday lenders, they're against fracking in some cases, what did they say? Fuck you. You didn't do shit for us. You may have gotten things done, but they have nothing to do with us. In the Senate, she sponsored 2 bills on her own, two bills as a main sponsor. They were to rename a couple things in New York State. I think one of them was a post office. The other was like a patch of road somewhere. So, yeah, we got some comments here. Gabriel, I think, you know, Gabriel, please comment. Did you understand my explanation about Islam? You know, why I think you're misunderstanding me. So I'm going to editorialize from here on. I'm going to cover one more thing with Al Gore. But with Hillary Clinton, you are going to get a Democratic Party, if they continue to cling to the Clintons or Clinton pawns, people like, I would say, Kirsten Gillibrand, who's trying to make herself not a Hillary pawn, but she is one, or Kamala Harris, or any of these other mainstream Democrats, Elizabeth Warren even. If they cling to these types of people, they're going to sink like a rock. They should embrace, for their own good, and I'm probably not going to vote for her, but I'd consider voting for her against somebody like Paul Ryan, Tulsi Gabbard, who is probably, you know, she's much more normal of a candidate than Hillary Clinton. She's never done any of these actions like advocate for going to war in Libya or vote for the Iraq War. She hasn't been basically in the bank for her donors over her entire career. They should embrace a candidate that can make a clean break with the dirty past of the Democratic Party. And if they don't, which they aren't doing, if they don't do this, they are going to look at a whole new decade of mediocrity. It's going to be, in my opinion, whether Trump runs in 2020 or not, you're going to see the Trump type candidates. They're going to rise to the top in the GOP, or if not, they're going to run as independents and run out some of these GOP establishment people, and they already are. You see Jeff Flake retiring. You see Mitch McConnell, I don't think is going to be able to run again in 2020. He's losing all of his support. You're going to see the Democratic Party, which can't shake off its old snakeskin. They're going to be up against a much fresher, relatively Republican Party, and it's going to be a shit show for them. And why am I bringing this up in the context of the Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama feud? Well, you can see here that people are trying to still cling to the notion that Hillary Clinton is a viable candidate, despite the fact that this is a woman who, in this current climate, she tolerated all of the bullshit of Anthony Weiner, never asked him to give an inch in any of his scandals. And we can see today that he was a liar. He was guilty of all the shenanigans he did of pretending that his account was hacked, which it wasn't. Sending lewd photos to women while he was married. None of it is technically a crime, what he did. I think the pedophilia thing was, he sent pictures to underage girls. Yes, that's a crime. That came much later, though. So I'm talking about from the beginning, Hillary Clinton, she allowed this other sexual deviant who, and by deviant, I mean he's running around and he's basically he's using his office as a cloak to attract women. I think he used his position as a congressman to hit on women. That's clearly, to me, that's the mark of somebody that Hillary Clinton attracts around her. Now, some people like to talk about the Podesta stuff with the Pizzagate or whatever. I'm not yet convinced that Pizzagate can be actually looked at as a serious matter until we actually see somebody come out and blow the whistle who was within whatever weird world that is. But Podesta has plenty of other skeletons. So Hillary Clinton, who was as establishment as it gets, who maintained ties to people like Podesta, like Rahm Emanuel, like you could say, well, George Soros, that goes for sure. You have her associating with people like Tim Kaine, people like Terry McAuliffe, corrupt politicians at the state level. This is a woman, people are aware that she represents the most regressive elements of the Democratic Party. Regressive in terms of progressive policies and regressive in terms of being accessible and accountable to voters. And on the other hand, the Obama camp, what they are trying to do is they're trying to steal any of the enthusiasm left in the Clinton camp, because they have, first of all, Barack Obama, say what you will about him, much more dynamic of a personality than Hillary Clinton ever was. He's more personable. You see him on camera. He talks to people like he's enjoying the conversation, not like he's smugly acting like the person talking to him is that he should be kissing Obama's ass. Obama is much more of a preferable personality than Hillary Clinton. I think even Joe Biden, creepy Uncle Joe, is much more of a palatable personality than Hillary Clinton. She comes into an interview, and you see her with this air of entitlement that I don't see with any other politician in American history. You don't see it with Bernie. You don't see it with Tulsi Gabbard. Even Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren has her own communication issues, but she comes across during an interview, and I'm talking all about perception here. I'm not talking about whether you like the politician or not. Elizabeth Warren will go into an interview, looks dead serious, is all about maintaining this reputation as a serious politician with real ideas. Okay, the fact that all of her ideas are a bunch of gibberish and they don't lead to anything. They're basically sanctimonious bullshit. That's a different matter. But Hillary Clinton, with her associations, with her personal conduct, her demeanor, her financial history, her history of being associated with convicted felons like like Mark Rich, and her I mean her daughter is married to the son of a congressman who was convicted of a felony, I think in like the 90s. Let me see here. Mark Mezvinsky. Her son-in-law is a former, Mark Mezvinsky was the head of a hedge fund, a Wall Street hedge fund that went belly up. It says here that in 2001, he was convicted of 31 charges of felony fraud and served 5 years in federal prison. Now, this isn't her son-in-law, but that's her son-in-law's dad, Edward Mezvinsky. So by relation, she's everything about the Clintons has to do with posturing yourself in politics. So the son-in-law is the son of a congressman who was convicted of felony fraud. Let me see what it was. It says in March 2001, Mezvinsky was indicted and later pleaded guilty to 31 of 69 felony charges of bank fraud, mail fraud, and wire fraud. Nearly $10 million was involved in the crimes. Shortly after his indictment, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but the judge at his trial disallowed a mental illness defense. He entered prison in February 2003 and served his time at federal prison camp El Eglin. Marjorie Margolis, who's the wife who's the wife of this guy, Edward Mezvinsky, requested a pardon for Mezvinsky in the waning days of the Clinton administration, but it was not acted upon. So he was released after 5 years. I'm not sure exactly what the crime was. I think his wife might have also gone to prison, but she was also a member of the House. She was from 1993 to 95 from Pennsylvania, and then she ran for governor. I think she lost. Yeah, and she went bankrupt after her husband was convicted. So these are the people she associates with. There was also, who's that other guy? Let's also throw in Anthony Weiner, even though I already mentioned him. This was a shady guy. Clinton was the matchmaker between her top aide, Huma Abedin, and Anthony Weiner. I mean, this is a woman with tremendously poor judgment of the people that she associates with. Or I think the alternative theory is that she keeps around her people that are very compromised because it's unlikely that they'll betray her. Another person that, there's the Podestas now with their lobbying scandal. There is her brother, Tony Rodham, who in the late 1990s, he was involved in some shady dealings with the country of Georgia, which is next to Russia. He eventually, by the way, he married the daughter of Barbara Boxer at the beginning of the Clinton administration and divorced her at the end. So everything has to do with politics. Everything is about how I can use you and you can use me. And the Obamas are trying to take over that world. And as long as the Clintons are still the big dogs, as long as Bill Clinton is the big dog, they can't do it. Now, once the Clintons are edged out of there, once they are gone from the political scene, whether it's by this sudden act of penance that they're doing, that they're saying, well, now that it's 20 years later, we should come to terms with Bill Clinton being a sexual predator. Now it's time for us to finally be brave and come to terms with the fact that a lame duck person who can't run for office anymore, at least not for president, was a sexual predator. Now is the time for us to finally make peace with the past. It's the least courageous stand you've ever seen. It doesn't have any. These people don't care at all about the appearance of propriety, and it's going to be this way for a while. You're going to see the Obama camp try to edge out Clinton loyalists. Like McAuliffe is out of politics already. He's gone. He was one of the Clintons' most powerful lieutenants in politics. Now think about that. No sooner does Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, leave office, who was one of Clinton's most heavy fundraising sources. No sooner does he leave office and gets replaced by somebody else. Now the Obamas they're going to be mining the new field, the new crop of whoever comes in through the progressive pipeline. And I think that they're going to be using it in order to propel to the top one of their own candidates, be it Michelle Obama, be it Valerie Jarrett, or one of these other Obama pawns. So look for that. And then we're going to talk about, for real quick, Al Gore, piece in the Orange County Register. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to read this through. Hopefully it won't take too long because I'm getting a little tired and I do want to look at the comments. It says, Al Gore's dark past is an inconvenient truth. This is from the Orange County Register in California, and it's by John Phillips, who works for CNN. It says, it seems to me, it seems like every time you open the morning paper, more powerful men are being accused of groping, raping, and generally treating their female colleagues in inappropriate and degrading ways. But it's not just political, corporate, and entertainment titans of today who are being called out. Many sins of the past are being re-examined in the context of our new sensitivities regarding gender relations. You don't have to look any farther than the pages of the New York Times or the airwaves of MSNBC to hear liberal voices openly opining that they blew it in the 1990s by not calling on former President Bill Clinton to step down after he admitted to an ongoing sexual relationship with a much younger intern. Not to mention rape allegations brought up by Juanita Broaddrick. They actually misspelled her name. It's Broaddrick. That's the way you spell Broaddrick in her case. Some on the left are even suggesting that we re-examine the way we look at former President John F. Kennedy in light of new information regarding how he treated female employees in the White House. Very, very nice. That's how you clean house by, think about it. They're talking about coming to terms with a former president who can't run anymore, and a dead president, one who died about 50, I think it's 54 years ago now, almost to the day. I think he died 54 years ago, 2 days ago. However, one prominent name has managed to stay off our radar, and I don't know why. I am, of course, speaking of former Vice President Al Gore. Back in 2006, a Portland, Oregon masseuse accused the former vice president of unwanted sexual contact while performing a massage on him in a hotel room. While speaking to detectives in May 2009, the woman said she had been doing requested abdominal work on Mr. Gore when he demanded she go lower. The New York Times reported that she told police, "I was shocked and I did not massage beyond what is considered a safe, non-sexual part of the abdomen," she said. He further insisted and acted angry, becoming verbally sharp and loud. I went into much deeper shock as I realized that it appeared he was demanding sexual favors or behaviors. She alleged he later tried to have sex with her. I did not immediately call the police as I feared being made into a public spectacle and my reputation being destroyed, she said. I was not sure what to tell them and was concerned my story would not be believed since there was no DNA evidence from a completed act of rape. No charges were ever filed due to a lack of evidence. A second incident allegedly took place at the luxury Beverly Hills Hotel in 2007 when Gore was in town for the Oscars. According to the National Enquirer, a Beverly Hills hotel source told them the therapist claimed that when they were alone, Gore shrugged off a towel and stood naked in front of her. The Enquirer also alleges Gore's fruit came out of the loom a third time a year later at a hotel in Tokyo. I'm sure his defenders will attack the journalistic integrity of the Enquirer, but I would note that they were the ones who broke the John Edwards, Bill Cosby, and Charlie Sheen stories before the mainstream media would touch them with a 10-foot pole. It is also worth noting that Radar magazine, a subsidiary of the National Enquirer, featured Charlie Rose in a cover story about toxic bachelors in 2007 and refused to run a retraction when David Boies, Al Gore's attorney in the 2000 Florida recount, threatened to sue them. Others on the list, Jeremy Piven, Jeffrey Epstein, Colin Farrell, Joe Francis, and Kevin Spacey. Well, I think all of them, except maybe for Joe Francis, have been revealed to have had, some of these charges were true. Not that they've been prosecuted. Like the vast majority of the hashtag #MeToo accusers I've seen on television of late, I believe the women who say that Al Gore assaulted them. Any conversation about powerful men behaving badly should include Al Gore's name, even if it's an inconvenient truth. Now, again, I would be completely dishonest if I didn't think that, he deserves a presumption of innocence too. But Al Gore's never commented on this. He's pretended it's not a story. He's thought that it would go away. So the same standard that they're applying to Roy Moore, they've never applied to Al Gore, even though there's been periodic talk of him getting back into politics. I think that it's important to realize that a lot of these sexual issues with politicians, they take a long time to shake out. In this case, this was something that I think came out. I remember it being resurfaced in like 2013 or 2014 that they were talking about Al Gore. But it's been around for a while, and the media they never had any outrage toward him, and they still look at him as this leader of the environmentalist movement and whatever. He's never faced any accountability over this, at least to tell his side of the story of what happened. But of course, the standards are different when you're talking about a conservative or about somebody that is not in the good graces of the liberal establishment. Okay, so let's go back to some of these comments. Wow, there's a lot. You guys really got going today. I have to go back a far. So I'm going back to where the rapper 10,000 joined in. Pinochet says they need to keep Churchill's name out of their mouth. Rapper 10,000 says, hey, happy Thanksgiving. Got into an argument with a liberal troll by the name of Addison Nobles who thinks liberals and SJWs are completely different things. Well, maybe have him on the program. Tell him to come on the stream one day. Catherine says she is not a feminist. I think she's talking about Hillary. She's a selfish piece of shit who cut the minimum wage of Haiti by a third. A true feminist builds families up. Hillary Clinton is a corrupt politician. This is the rapper 10,000 who only cares about her own narratives than the American people. Too bad shallow feminists can't see that. Pinochet says Hillary is a frickin' communist. Well, I think that by her actions, she's just a self-promoter. It has nothing. She doesn't have an ideology. I'd say that if there was a way for her to come to power as a communist, she would definitely she'd rock that red and yellow flag all day. But no, I don't think she believes in anything. Then he says feminists have destroyed the American family by hating on the father figure and abusing the welfare system. Gabriel says President Trump has to take his time, otherwise they'll claim it's a witch hunt. The rapper says, do you see anything different between liberal and SJWs? Because I don't. Also, I don't want socialism in this country, which is why I hated Bernie Sanders. Socialism and communism failed. Yeah, there is a difference between liberals and SJWs. The difference is pretty subtle, though, because a liberal is somebody who will try to live according to their own way of life. They don't necessarily, or these are the liberals, the modern liberals. This isn't classical liberalism. But they believe that you should modernize everything, including social conduct, and then have people live, without any moral encumbrances. But then they want to deny certain rights to other people that go against their own personal orthodoxy. So an SJW, I think, is kind of a liberal on steroids because in reality, they don't have many concrete beliefs. They will simply take some of these stylistic, stylish belief systems like socialism, and they'll pay lip service to them, but they don't really understand them. They don't really understand how to implement them. They don't understand why they have failed. So I think that an SJW is a much more advanced stage of modern liberalism, which should be distinguished from traditional liberalism, if you can call it traditional. Pinochet says, Gabriel, absolutely everybody that thinks this should go quickly has never watched government move on anything. Gabriel says Obama was born in Kenya, so how could he become president? He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Rapper 10,000 says, have you heard about this black athlete, Wendell Brown, arrested in China, and now the mother is asking for Trump for help? No, I'll look it up. I didn't know about this. Is that related at all to what happened with, LeVar Ball? or LiAngelo Ball. Wendell Brown, China. Okay, so this is a former high school football star who got arrested for assault in China. So he got arrested for assault, and it's going to be interesting what happens. I think it'll be harder for Trump to take him out of prison. Catherine says, liars who call themselves feminists are trying to destroy the family. Real feminists love their families. And then Dean says, nope, same damn thing if you ask me. Trevor Loudon has exposed red card-carrying members of the Communist Party in both parties. It's frightening. You know, I think I have seen Trevor Loudon, and he's pretty interesting. He has some compelling evidence. And then he says, coffee talk, ding, 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 Pinochet. He knows exactly what, it's like he clicks. He clicks with me. That's exactly. It was coffee talk. I'm very verklempt. Gabriel says Hillary already claiming Trump is coming after her due to personal reasons and not the uranium one treason she committed. Then Gabriel says 3 million illegals votes plus the rigging. Let me scroll down. The rapper says Malcolm X warned about white guilt liberal is true. Yeah, probably. I mean, if somebody comes to you and tries to support you out of personal guilt, you have to wonder exactly when they're ever going to. I mean, how can they have proper judgment of what's the right way to help if they're doing everything out of guilt? Dean Kruger says, you guys have a lot of comments today, so I'm not gonna be able to read all of them. So Dean says, my son is going to a trade school now. It's called Wimoco. He goes there for half the day. He's taking machine shop. That's a great career. I know people who have done it. It's a great idea. And then the rapper says, some people say it's funny that people who watch Fox News call CNN fake news. What? CNN, just like the mainstream media, has a biased viewpoint that can be fake news. Well, what's more ironic is that they still think that the Fox News idea, and this I've said before on several podcasts, they still think that you can attack somebody by saying, hey, that's really funny you believe that. You must have heard it on Fox News or faux news, as they've called it, FAUX. Well, and Fox News is so fake, and I'm not saying that I'm a fan of Fox News. I actually don't watch it, and I only read it once in a while. If it's so fake, then how come they've taken Fox News alumni like Megyn Kelly, like Greta Van Susteren, and they've hired them at MSNBC, or they've taken that Jordan Sheridan guy who is embroiled in that controversy lately with TYT and the sexual harassment. He originally apparently came from Fox News. And TYT hired him. And Cenk Uygur, I think, was originally on one of those conservative networks. I'm not sure if it was Fox News. So they're full of shit when they do that. They try to say, "Oh, we're real journalists. We're not like Fox News." No. If people are still hiring Fox News journalists in order to go and work for other outlets, then maybe maybe you're full of shit too. Maybe both networks are full of shit. Gabriel says, hands up, don't shoot was a blatant lie, which cost the lives of these poor police officers. Then Rapper 10,000 says, quote from Married with Children, everybody I know is going to vote for a woman, regardless of their qualification or stance on the issues. That is exactly how they treated Hillary Clinton and Obama. Yep. Gabriel says, term limits should be imposed as this would help cut down on the corruption. Dean Kruger says, I think that we should support conservative and centralist schools. Pinochet says progressive is just a code word for communist. Don't be fooled by Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders crap. It's all a pack of lies. Well, I'm not saying I would vote for them, but I'd say that for the Democrats, it's much better. It's a much better option to go with those people who at least have a certain system of beliefs than a total snake like Hillary Clinton. New York wouldn't be so bad if we could split from downstate. This is Dean Kruger from upstate New York. Yeah, I've heard people that want to separate. Then I don't know why they censored this globalist comment. Okay, so I think I'll call it a day for now. It's been a pretty long stream. I think it's over an hour and a half, but I like the energy. I don't know. You guys have so many comments. I don't know if I can keep going with reading so many of them. And I was overwhelmed today. I think I got a lot of participation. I got a lot. So please tune in Sunday, 12 p.m. We're going to be talking to possibly two people from Zimbabwe about the situation there. Catherine Horrell says Staten Island want to separate from the rest of the city. Yeah, I've heard about that. And we're going to be talking about Zimbabwe on Sunday. Who's to know what will happen until then? But I hope you guys have enjoyed this experience. I'm trying to make the best, do the best I can with only live streams. Maybe next week I'll go back to doing some edited videos if I can, figure out the best software and use the best and probably get a different computer to do it with. But I'm genuinely glad to see more and more people participating, and I want, please share my streams, share the channel. Hopefully not all these videos will be as long, but yeah, and if you guys want, you should start your own channel too. You should start your own channel. You should start participating, because they will try to cut off people that are trying to get the alternative perspectives out there. I'm not saying it's going to happen with me, because I don't have that big of an audience, but there are people that do, and they're losing. Some of their channels are just getting yanked away from them, and it'll happen. And then it's next man up, basically. Next man up has to, or next woman up, Catherine, if you want to do it. Everybody has to do their part. Either try to share the stream, like the stream, and subscribe to the stream. And I hope you have a great Friday and the rest of your weekend. See you Sunday.